A horizon filled with dragon-headed longships, sails billowing in the northern wind, symbolizes the dawn of a new era. These are the Vikings, seafaring warriors from the icy realms of Scandinavia, masters of exploration and combat. Their arrival on Britain's shores marked a turning point, one filled with both fear and fascination. The mystique of the Vikings goes beyond mere plunder and conquest. It's a complex journey of cultural exchange, innovation, and courage. With swords as sharp as their navigational skills, they imprinted themselves on the land and people of Britain, forging a legacy that would shape history. In this video, we will embark on an exploration into the true nature of these legendary figures, uncovering more than a tale of warriors, but a journey through time and a unique chapter in human civilization. Join us as we uncover the intricate layers of Viking history in medieval England. The land of fjords, forests, and freezing winters, Scandinavia was the cradle of the Viking civilization. It was a harsh and demanding environment, where survival required both courage and ingenuity. This homeland nurtured a people skilled in navigation, shipbuilding, and warfare, traits that would define the Viking legacy. The Vikings' reasons for venturing out were as multifaceted as their society. Driven by a combination of overpopulation, political ambitions, and economic opportunities, they sought new lands to conquer and settle. Their explorations were not merely raids for plunder, but calculated expansions in search of arable land, trade routes, and political influence. The sagas of the time depict heroic voyages to unknown territories, a vivid reflection of the adventurous spirit that guided them. Central to the Viking identity was their rich mythology, filled with gods and goddesses that represented natural forces and human virtues. Odin, the All-Father, symbolized wisdom and leadership, while Thor wielded his mighty hammer to control thunder and lightning. These deities were not distant figures, but an integral part of daily life, guiding morality, decision-making, and even the outcome of battles. The Viking runes, not just an alphabet but a complex system of symbols, encapsulated their worldview, often carved into stones or artifacts to tell stories or invoke protection. These enigmatic symbols continue to intrigue scholars today, providing glimpses into the spiritual and intellectual landscape of the Vikings. In understanding the origins of the Vikings, one must embrace the intricate interplay between their homeland, the forces that drove them to explore, and the myths that defined their world. The Vikings were not mere barbarians, but a society with a sophisticated culture, with a thirst for knowledge and an appetite for discovery, characteristics that laid the foundations for their impact on the broader history of Europe. Their relationship with medieval England was one marked by conflict, coexistence, and ultimately, profound influence. It began with the infamous raid on the monastery of Lindisfarne in 793 AD, an event that heralded a new era of interaction between Scandinavia and the British Isles. These initial raids soon evolved into more organized efforts to settle and control vast territories. The creation of the Danelaw, an area of England subject to Danish law, served as a live reminder of the Vikings' impact. Towns like York flourished under Viking rule, transforming into bustling centers of trade and craftsmanship. Settlement wasn't just about ruling, it was about integration and adaptation. The Vikings intermingled with the local population, leading to cultural exchanges that left a lasting imprint on language and social customs. Old Norse merged with Old English, birthing new words and grammatical structures. Place names bearing the marks of Viking origin can still be found in modern England, but the influence wasn't one-sided. The Vikings also absorbed aspects of Anglo-Saxon culture, such as Christianity, which they embraced alongside their traditional beliefs. They adopted new agricultural practices, trade connections, and legal systems, contributing to the fusion of cultures. The artistic expressions of the time, from jewelry to manuscript illumination, display a mingling of styles, reflecting a society in the midst of transformation. Poetry and sagas from the Viking Age echo the trials, triumphs, and tribulations of this complex relationship. Their time in medieval England wasn't merely a chapter of invasion and occupation, undoubtedly. It was a dance between two civilizations, each learning, adapting, and reshaping the other. The echoes of this intricate relationship can be heard in the language, seen in the landscape, and felt in the cultural fabric of modern Britain, painting a vivid picture of a time when the Northmen shaped a nation. Yet, the Vikings' interactions with the British kingdoms during the medieval period were a complex blend of conflicts, alliances, and even mercenary relationships. This multifaceted relationship shaped the political and cultural landscape of the time. Conflicts were numerous and fierce. The Vikings' raids on monasteries and settlements were not only driven by the desire for loot, but also a strategic maneuver to gain control over territories, as we said before. Battles such as the Battle of Edington in 878, where King Alfred the Great faced the Danish army, showcased the intensity and scale of these clashes. Over time, the Vikings' military tactics evolved, moving from swift hit-and-run attacks to organized sieges and territorial conquests. But not all relationships were hostile. Alliances were often forged between Viking leaders and British rulers. The Treaty of Wedmore between Alfred and the Viking leader Guthrum is a prominent example of political maneuvering to establish peace and define territories. These alliances were often sealed with marriages, fostering bonds between families and tribes. Vikings also found roles as mercenaries within the British kingdoms. Their reputation as formidable warriors made them sought-after military assets. Viking mercenaries, known as the Jomsvikings, served various rulers across Europe, including the British Isles. They were part of complex networks of loyalty, trading military service for protection, land, or wealth. The dynamics between the Vikings and the British kingdoms were never static, constantly shifting with the tides of ambition, necessity, and opportunity. The ebb and flow of power saw kingdoms rise and fall, alliances form and break, and warriors switch sides in the ever-changing game of medieval politics. These interactions left indelible marks on the cultures, languages, and laws of the regions involved. The interplay between conflict and cooperation, warfare and diplomacy, created a vibrant and often unpredictable period that continues to capture the imagination of historians and enthusiasts alike. In exploring the conflicts and alliances with the British kingdoms, we uncover a nuanced picture of the Vikings, not merely as invaders, but as political players, allies, and even hired swords. Their role in shaping medieval Britain is a testimony to their adaptability, strategic thinking, and enduring impact on the world stage. The Vikings' warrior prowess is well known, a legacy written in battle and conquest. But what about their daily life? Behind the swords and shields lay a rich and complex society. The Viking homestead was a hub of activity, with men and women engaged in various tasks. Farming was a crucial part of their existence, with many Vikings growing crops and raising livestock. They were skilled fishermen and hunters, relying on the bountiful Nordic landscapes for sustenance. Artisanship thrived in Viking communities, from intricate jewelry making to shipbuilding. Craftsmen and women worked with materials like metal, wood, bone, and textiles, creating objects that were both functional and beautiful. Women held significant roles within Viking society. Known as shield maidens, some were trained in combat and took part in raids. But more commonly, women managed households, raised children, and were involved in trade and business. Viking society was governed by a complex legal system, and community gatherings known as things were held to resolve disputes and make collective decisions. Honor, reputation, and personal responsibility were values held in high regard. Religion and mythology were woven into the fabric of daily life, with the Norse gods and goddesses playing an essential role in understanding the world around them. Rituals, sacrifices, and celebrations marked the turning of seasons and significant life events. Education was informal, with skills and knowledge passed down through families and apprenticeships. Poetry, storytelling, and music were vital cultural expressions, preserving history, law, and social norms. From the intricacies of daily life to the grand stage of leadership, the Viking story is incomplete without recognizing the figures who led them. Two important figures stand out here, exemplifying the Viking spirit and influence: Ragnar Lothbrok and King Knut the Great. Ragnar Lothbrok, more myth than man, is a name that evokes both dread and admiration. The sagas depict him as a legendary warrior and king, known for his cunning, bravery, and fearsome reputation. His alleged sons, the great heathen army leaders, continued his legacy, conquering and ruling parts of England. Ragnar's tale, whether rooted in historical fact or legend, has become a symbol of the Viking ethos, inspiring literature, art, and even modern television series. King Canute the Great, on the other hand, is a historical figure whose accomplishments are well documented. Ascending to the throne in the early 11th century, Canute managed to unite England, Denmark, Norway, and parts of what is now Sweden under his rule. His reign was marked by wise governance, embracing both Viking and Christian traditions. Canute's laws and diplomatic endeavors helped to stabilize the region and laid groundwork for a more unified kingdom. But even the most powerful era must find its end. As the shadows began to lengthen on the once dominant Vikings in Britain, the decline unfurled like a slow-setting sun, casting an inevitable end to their powerful era. The very strength that once held the Vikings in formidable control began to wane. The late 10th century saw cracks appear within their unity, and new centralized English kingdoms rose, defiantly facing their Viking oppressors. Landscapes that had once trembled under the Viking march were now being reclaimed. Battles were no longer tales of conquest, but of loss and retreat. The fiery spirit of the Viking warrior was now smoldering, turning from aggression to a desire for settlement and peace. This change was more than just a military defeat. It was a transformation. The Vikings in Britain began to weave themselves into the fabric of local life, becoming neighbors instead of conquerors. Their culture melded with the local customs, and they found a new identity, not as outsiders, but as part of a larger community. Thus, the Vikings' decline was not a fall from grace, but a graceful descent, a shifting from power to integration. As this chapter in the story of the Vikings in Britain comes to a close, a path filled with complexity and transformation has been unveiled. From fierce warriors to integrated neighbors, the Vikings' journey through history is a vivid and multifaceted tale that continues to fascinate. If this exploration into the world of the Vikings has piqued your interest, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you.